This is the 2012 Chrysler 200S convertible. Now, the old Chrysler Sebring convertible, let's be honest, it was pretty terrible. And really, they didn't have a whole lot of money to try and correct this problem when Fiat took over. So what they've done is they've taken the Sebring, they've fixed quite a lot in the suspension, and they've sort of gently restyled the Sebring. Let's take a look. The Chrysler 200 is essentially a mid-cycle refresh of the Chrysler Sebring, and as such all the hard points in the vehicle have remained the same. That's to say the shapes of the doors, the chassis, and where everything bolts into the car is exactly the same as it is in the Sebring. That means things like these front door handles are positioned a little bit awkwardly for the 200 style. On the bright side, this dashboard has been thoroughly reworked and now has a lot of soft touch materials. We have this thick-rimmed Chrysler corporate steering wheel, leather-wrapped of course in the S model. We have nice buttons on the front, and we have our usual radio control buttons here on the back, volume on the right and track up and down on the left. We have the usual corporate radio here from Chrysler. Now unfortunately this was not able to be redesigned to cost constraints, we assume, so this is not the same Uconnect 8.3 radio that you'll see in the new Chrysler 300 and certain other Chrysler models. This is their older Uconnect system, which does have iPod integration as well as Bluetooth speakerphone interface. Compared to the Mitsubishi Spider, this interior is much better, and it's about on par with the new Ford Mustang, if I'm completely honest, although I have to say that I do prefer the Mustang's interior styling. Cargo space is one of the reasons you'd buy the Chrysler 200 convertible. As you can see, I fit in the trunk at the same time as this roller bag. This is the largest roller bag you can carry on a domestic flight. And that's with the top in place, of course. There's really no difference in trunk room between the hardtop and the soft top models, and that's because the design and the shape of the panels in the hardtop and the soft top are essentially the same. So when they're folded into the trunk, they occupy the same portion of the trunk, which we'll take a look at now. In order to fold the top, the first thing we have to do is move our luggage to the very far back of the trunk space here, fold down this cargo divider, and latch it into place. Now you can see what's left of the trunk. We can fit one roller bag, possibly pushed all the way to the side, and perhaps one additional small bag or a laptop bag, something like that here. We tried our best to fit two roller bags in this space. You just can't do it. This means that if you're a party of two and you're taking a vacation somewhere, one person needs to pack really lightly, or you need to use a garment bag because there is about enough room under here, under this little divider flap here, to put one roller bag in the trunk. This, of course, means it's now time to find out how well a journalist fits in the trunk, so let's answer this burning question. The answer is not at all well. Even though this is quite a large trunk for a convertible, you just couldn't fit me in here and close the trunk lid. The Chrysler 200 is rated for a 4-passenger capacity, but we're really limited by that trunk space. And what I mean is, as you've seen before, you can only fit about 2 persons worth of luggage in the trunk when the top is down like this. That's kind of a shame because this back seat is large and it's fairly comfortable. I'm 6 feet tall, this driver's seat is adjusted for me, and I still have about 2 inches worth of legroom left back here. In addition, these rear seats are shaped like normal seats, which is a relief because if you've been in a wide number of convertibles like a Jaguar or a Mercedes convertible, a BMW convertible, the smaller ones, the rear seats are shaped funny. They don't have a normal recline to the back. Some of them tend to be kind of curved so that you have to lean forward strangely in order to sit in them. The Chrysler 200 seats are shaped appropriately for an hour or 2-hour trip in the car. It's almost kind of a shame that there's no middle seat here in the rear. My only complaint from the driver's seat is this driver's seat itself, really. I'm sitting on it rather than in it, and by that I mean the bolstering and the padding in this seat is such that my butt is sitting sort of on this little mound on the seat. It feels kind of like I'm sitting on a large gumdrop, and as a result, my hips are not touching these bolsters in the seat. As we continue our review, there's one important thing to keep in mind. Chrysler's given us the 200S model here to test, and that means all 4 corners are shod with P225 50 R18s. That's fairly wide rubber and fairly low profile for a car of this type, and that really does have an effect on the handling. The other thing you have to keep in mind is the weight of the Chrysler 200. The Chrysler 200 convertible weighs about 4,100 pounds with a soft top. When you add the hard top, Chrysler doesn't release any specifics on how much that adds, but we estimate it to be at least 150 pounds, which means this car, with gas and with a driver, weighs almost 4,500 pounds. As with the Chrysler 200 sedan, the convertible has two engine options. We have a 171 horsepower 2.4-liter inline four-cylinder engine, or the Pentastar 3.6-liter V6, which produces 283 horsepower. As you could expect, with 4,100 pounds to motivate, four-cylinder acceleration is extremely leisurely. In fact, I can't imagine why anyone would want to buy the 2.4-liter four-cylinder engine unless you're really, really worried about cost. But then again, I'm not sure why you'd be worried about cost because, you know, this is about a $30,000 convertible to begin with. Admittedly, the four-cylinder engine is a little bit smaller, but it doesn't get any better fuel economy, so you can't justify getting the four-cylinder by fuel economy. That being said, the 3.6-liter Pentastar V6 really is a gem of an engine. 283 horsepower is pretty good for this segment, especially when you consider that the Mustang 3.6-liter V6 produces about 300 horsepower, so it's fairly competitive, really. There's quite a bit of torque steer, so I wouldn't want any more power in a front-wheel drive car, and acceleration happens in just under 7 seconds to 60. The 200 convertible gets the same 6-speed automatic transaxle as the Chrysler 200 sedan, and that's Chrysler's in-house developed transaxle. The transmission is a little bit slow to shift, and the shifts are a little bit odd because there's quite a delay from one gear to the other. Kickdown shifts in the transmission are fairly leisurely as a result, but that goes with the rest of the nature of the Chrysler 200 convertible, which is definitely a softly sprung, large, heavy convertible. It's odd when you think about it because in my mind, I don't imagine the Sebring as a large sedan, but when it's converted into a convertible, it's really pretty large vehicle. I mean, we have full-size back seats back there, we have a decently sized trunk, we have an enormous lid, and we have a 4,000-pound vehicle, so everything points to the Chrysler 200 convertible as being a very large convertible. The Sebring convertible, if you recall, if you've ever driven one, was, I mean, let's be honest, fairly terrible on the road. There was a lot of cowl shake, the chassis was just really awful. I mean, it felt like you were driving a wet noodle. I don't know how else to describe it. The new 200, however, is strangely different. That's something I didn't expect at all. Chrysler's done an awful lot of work on the suspension, and that really shows in this particular model. They've also added an extra cross brace under the hood for torsional rigidity with the top down in this particular model, and that again definitely shows. On windy mountain roads, this goes from a vehicle that no one would want to drive to something that actually is quite pleasant to drive. I'm not saying this handles as well as a Mustang because, let's be frank, it really doesn't. But with 225 width tires all around and these suspension modifications on a windy California mountain road, I was having quite a bit of fun. If you're looking for fun to drive, you should go right past the Chrysler dealer to the Ford dealer and buy a Mustang convertible. That being said, the ride in the Chrysler 200 is much improved over the previous generation, and so you couldn't be faulted if you lived in a snowy area where you wanted that front-wheel drive sure-footedness in the snow, or you wanted a softer ride or a real back seat. Again, this back seat is much larger, and the 200 is slightly cheaper than a Mustang, about $1,000 to $1,500 similarly equipped based on our calculations.